Welcome back, and now for the news in detail. In Afghanistan, a week-long violence reduction agreement between the US, the Taliban and Afghan security forces has taken effect. The US and the Taliban both set the plan as a precondition to signing a peace agreement on 29th of February.
Welcoming the development, Afghan President Ashraf Ghani said the army will remain at active defense status during the week. The Afghan National Security Council said the government hopes the peace plan will open the way for a ceasefire and intra-Afghan talks. In a tweet, Taliban spokesman Suhail Shaheen said the agreement will end the country's foreign occupation. The group said both sides will invite senior representatives to take part in the agreement signing ceremony. The Taliban said the signing will be followed by intra-Afghan talks between the country's political parties. Earlier, US Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the move will reduce the US presence in the country.
Meanwhile, Pakistan has welcomed the announcement of the signing of a peace deal between the Taliban and the US. In a statement, Pakistan's Foreign Minister Shah Mahmood Qureshi said Islamabad played a constructive role in the US-Taliban dialogue. The Foreign Minister said it was not easy to convince the Taliban for negotiations with the US. Qureshi said the whole world, including the US, has acknowledged Pakistan's positive role. The Foreign Minister said Washington should be aware of the spoilers in this peace initiative. The United Nations says over 100,000 Afghan civilians were killed or wounded in the last 10 years. The report by the UN Assistance Mission in Afghanistan comes as a week of violence reduction begins today. The report said 3,493 civilians were killed last year, while nearly 7,000 others suffered injuries. It said there is a 21% increase in civilian casualties by the Taliban and an 18% rise in the casualties by the US and Afghan forces. The UN said violence in the country affected almost every civilian in some way. The international body said it is absolutely imperative for all the parties to seize the moment to stop fighting, as peace is long overdue. Taking steps against terrorism, Pakistan has successfully eliminated militants, foiled terror attacks, and brought back stability. In the last 20 years, the country's military and the security forces have tirelessly fought against the menace of terrorism. Under anti-terrorism campaign Raddul Fasad, the military has carried out almost 149,000 operations and averted nearly 400 terrorist plans since 2017. Due to forces' efforts, Pakistan's economic hub, Karachi's ranking has improved by 91 points in the Crimes Index. To stop cross-border terrorism, Pakistan has fenced 1,450 kilometers of its border with Afghanistan. Pakistan Army has built 343 forts and 161 are under construction along the border. Army Chief General Qamar Javed Bajwa said the army is a state institution working for security and stability as a force of peace and order. In another act of state terrorism, Indian troops have martyred 2 youths in Anantnag district of occupied Kashmir. Police said the civilians were targeted during a cordon and search operation in the Sangam village of the district. Indian forces have martyred 28 Kashmiris over the past 2 months. Meanwhile, Indian forces have arrested 2 Kashmiris under controversial Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. A person booked under the act can be jailed for months without bail. Civilians were arrested for alleged misuse of social media against Indian forces in the valley. The valley is reeling under Indian curfew and the communications blackout for the last 202 days. Pakistan's Prime Minister Imran Khan says that India has turned occupied Kashmir into an open prison. In an interview, Khan highlighted increased Indian atrocities in the valley. The Prime Minister said current Indian government follows a Hindutva ideology which is inspired by Nazism. He said due to its extremism, New Delhi has jailed 8 million Kashmiri Muslims since 5th of August. The Prime Minister said Kashmir issue is the major impediment to trade cooperation between Pakistan and India. President Donald Trump will raise the issue of religious freedom in India during his visit to the country next week. US officials said a religious rights violation in India's new Citizenship Act is on Trump's agenda for his meeting with Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The official said religious freedom issue is extremely important to the Trump administration. Meanwhile, United States Commission on International Religious Freedom has criticized the Citizenship Amendment Act. In a report, US CIRF highlights BJP's anti-Muslim sentiment influencing the laws of the land. It said a number of political parties, NGOs and religious groups have moved Indian Supreme Court against the law. Meanwhile, in India, countrywide protests, rallies and sit-ins against the controversial Citizenship Act continue despite the government's pressure. The BJP government is facing massive demonstrations against the law for the last 3 months. In a meeting with Supreme Court appointed interlocutors, Shaheen Bagh protesters said police have blocked the road to sit inside. The protesters said plainclothes policemen are stopping traffic and blaming it on demonstrators spreading negative propaganda. Meanwhile, similar all-women sit-ins continue in Mumbai, Kolkata and Lucknow. The new coronavirus has claimed another 109 lives in the last 24 hours in China. It now puts the death toll to 2,345. In a significant decline of the new cases, the National Health Commission says 397 more infections have been confirmed, bringing the total to 76,000. More in this report.
With the death toll from the new coronavirus outbreak rising globally, fear is spreading at a faster rate. Italy has reported its first COVID-19 fatality, while in the Middle East, 5 people have died in Iran. Iraqi officials have clamped down on travel to and from the country and have begun screening travelers for the virus. The Najaf International Airport, in cooperation with the Najaf Health Department, has taken all necessary measures by providing detection equipment in arrival halls to check the passengers, and thank God, no cases have been found. The World Health Organization says the international community must act quickly to control the spread of the new coronavirus. The global health body is warning the opportunity to stem the spread of the disease is shrinking.
Our situation is that we're still in a phase where containment is possible with a narrowing window of opportunity. And if there is anything move into another level, then we will announce it as soon as possible. We'll be the first to tell you that we're shifting into another level.
A WHO team of international experts and Chinese officials are visiting Wuhan today to assess the situation.
Israeli police have shot dead a Palestinian youth in Jerusalem's annexed Old City. Police claim they opened the fire after the boy attempted to stab an officer posted near one of the gates. Witnesses say the youth was shot several times before medics arrived at the scene. Tensions in the region are high after the US President Donald Trump unveiled his Middle East peace plan. The plan gives Israel a green light to annex key parts of the occupied West Bank. In Iran, the counting for the parliamentary elections have started after voting ended last evening. Over 7,000 candidates are contesting 290 seats across 31 provinces. The Interior Ministry said it will start releasing results for the smaller constituencies, while voter turnout will also be announced today. It said the final results will be approved by the 12-member Guardian Council in early next week. The ministry added the approved results will be released about 2 weeks later. The parliament represents the country's 207 electoral districts. Some prominent pro-reform politicians and activists have called for the elections to be boycotted. A clerical body is responsible for appointing the supreme leader. Iran has criticized the Financial Action Task Force for placing the country on a blacklist. Foreign Office spokesman Abbas Musavi called the step a politicized act, saying the stigma of financing terrorism has nothing to do with Tehran. The task force claimed the step was taken after Iran failed to comply with international anti-terrorism financing norms. Musavi said for over 2 years, Iran has followed regulations with regard to money laundering and terrorist financing. More stories to follow, but right after a short break. Stay tuned. Welcome back. In Canada, Ontario's 4 major teaching unions have closed the province's public education system, leaving over 2 million school capped public sector wage rises at 1% for 3 years. Parliamentary teachers said the future of the full-day kindergarten, funding for special education teachers and seniority hiding rules are their main concerns. The provincial education minister said Ontario teachers are the second highest paid in Canada. Teachers said they will not back down from their demands, having been without a contract since August the 31st. In Chile, hundreds of anti-government protesters have clashed with the security forces in the capital, Santiago. Demonstrations over public reforms have again flared up after becoming only sporadic in recent weeks. Young protesters equipped with gas masks and shields threw items at police who tried to break them up with as water cannon. Chile has been rocked by protests since October, calling for better pensions, healthcare and education. President Sebastián Piñera agreed to a referendum on a new constitution in December last year. The 2-day European Union summit to set the budget for the next 7 years has ended without agreement. The EU is attempting to close an $81 billion gap left by the UK's departure. The bloc faces challenges on climate, migration and development. More in this report.
European leaders fell out over their next budget following tense talks to find a way of filling the Brexit-shaped hole. The summit exposed rifts between the rich and poorer states.
I'd even rather not talk about the details. The differences were just too big. We didn't make it, so we will have to continue to work. Anyway, there was no Franco-German proposal. After the many bilateral meetings overnight, there was a joint proposal of the EU President and the European Commission. This proposal was not even introduced in detail because it was clear that the main elements of the proposal wouldn't be sufficient to reach a compromise.
Denmark, Austria, Sweden and the Netherlands said spending should cap at 1% of joint GDP, but the beneficiaries of that spending asked for more than the previous proposal of 1.074%. Meanwhile, the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said EU discord is a sign of democracy.
All of us working on the common priority that is the European Union and its budget for the next 7 years. And I think it is a good tradition in democracy to debate over the different views, the different emphasis or the different focuses that are put forward by the different member states.
The trillion-euro budget and its multi-annual financial framework will come into effect from next year and run to the end of 2027.
Soldiers from Niger and France have killed 120 terrorists in a joint military operation in southwest Niger. In a statement, the country's defense ministry said forces also seized bomb-making equipment and vehicles. The statement said the operation was carried out in the vast Tillaberi region near the border with Mali and Burkina Faso. It said there were no losses among Nigerian or French troops. Niger's defense minister Issoufou Katambe praised the French cooperation in the battle against terrorism. The region has been in a state of emergency for the past 2 years after militant attacks that killed hundreds of Nigerian soldiers. The UN Refugee Agency says more than 4,000 people are forced by violence to flee their homes every day in Burkina Faso. A report from the agency says the major reason for the violence is an increase in attacks by extremist groups. The international body said 765,000 people have already been displaced since January the 1st. It said the people fleeing the violence report attacks, killings, rape, and theft by the militant groups. The agency also said an estimated 150,000 people have fled in the last 3 weeks alone. In Indonesia, 8 students have been killed as a flash flood swept away banks of the Sembor River. In a statement, National Disaster Agency spokesman August Wibowo said 23 others were injured, while 3 are missing. Wibowo said a group of 250 students were tracking and exploring the river in Sleman district as a Boy Scouting activity. He said water volume from the upstream suddenly rose with a strong current sweeping away the students who were on the side of the river. The Southeast Asian archipelago is regularly hit by floods during the rainy season, which starts in late November. Torrential rain in January triggered flooding and landslides that killed nearly 70 people in and around the capital, Jakarta. Prince Harry and his wife Meghan have decided not to use the term Sussex Royal in their brand from this spring. In January, the Duke and Duchess abruptly decided to begin a new life in Canada, stepping back from their royal duties in Britain. Harry and Meghan had planned to use the name Sussex Royal for their new charitable foundation and social media accounts. For this, the couple had been in discussion with the Buckingham Palace. It has now been agreed government rules prevent the word royal being used. The couple will remove the royal name tag from their Instagram and website. Applications to trademark the Sussex Royal brand will also be withdrawn. The two will carry out their final public engagements as members of the Britain's royal family until their status changes on March the 31st. At the New York Toy Fair, toy maker Mattel has announced a new line of Barbie dolls in Summer Olympic kit. The dolls in sports gear for karate and surfing spotlight the new Summer Games added to this year's Olympics at Tokyo. Watch this report.
Children who want to appear in the Olympic Games are slightly closer to achieving the goal, at least in their imaginations. Barbies are back, sporting sports gear they will need to get to the top of the podium. Mattel has showcased a new line of Barbie dolls in sports kit used in the Summer Olympics.
All of them come in their sports outfits, but they also come in their warm-up suits, which are reflective of what's going to be seen at the Tokyo 2020 Olympics. They also can inspire kids from any country to see themselves and the different women who are competing in these sports.
The collection comes in time for the return of softball to the Games, last included in 2008 at Beijing. The remaining sports celebrated in the collection include karate, surfing and skateboarding, each making their debut at Tokyo.
Well, the Olympics are so big, and you also have to think globally. You know, Mattel and Hot Wheels is a global brand, so you often think U.S. No, you can't think U.S. The whole world watches the Olympics. So when you have something that's going to appeal to the entire world, and young kids are going to be watching, to have products that are tied to it really makes sense.
Mattel's other Olympics edition toy lines, such as Hot Wheels and Uno, will hit the shelves in March.
Now the weather situation from around the globe. And that's all for now. For the latest updates, you can follow us on social media at Indus Special.